If it means stopping the Dominion threat and saving mutant and humankind alike, will Charles Xavier be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice? Well, let's hop into the pages of Rise of the Powers of X issue number 3 and find out together, shall we? So then, as we join this newest issue, we are once again back in time with young Moira. Today is a very special day, and she full well knows it. Today is the day her mutant powers activate, which means she no longer needs to play life so safely, because very soon she is going to become a very strange and very powerful type of immortal indeed. Little Moira goes to her family garden to celebrate, only to realize that today is unlike all the other days when she's grown into her power, because today Charles Xavier is waiting for her on a bench. And honestly, I kinda love the poetic imagery here, because you'll remember when all of this started, Moira met Xavier on the bench. Now everything's been turned flip upside down. But by far the craziest part, though, is that little girl Moira knows full well that if Xavier is right here, right now, he can only have one intention in mind, and that is to murder her. Now, from there we transition on over to the present, where modern-day Moira is just about to have an audience with the Enigma Dominion, aka the all-powerful Essex AI brain that now desperately wants to try and strike a deal with Moira in an attempt to save its own creation from getting deleted from history. Moira understands the gravity of what a Dominion is. In fact, this isn't the first time she's met one, but at the same time, she has to be self-serving and wonders what joining forces with Enigma would do for her. And to answer that question, we're actually treated to another one of those appendix pages, and this one might actually be the most important one to date. You see, as Enigma explains, it was actually the Dominion that sent Omega Sentinel back in time in the first place so that she could start Orchis and kickstart all of these events to begin with. This also means that Enigma just so happens to be from the future, where mutant kind was almost about to triumph over machine kind thanks to a mythical weapon called the Phoenix Blade. It's after that we check on in with Rasputin 4 and the rest of the mutants in the no place. Things aren't exactly going great right now as they continue to come under attack by Chronal Sentinels. They're doing everything they can to hold out. But wouldn't you just know it, in all the chaos and confusion, Mr. Sinister's mask ends up slipping, and suddenly Rasputin is able to see that that's not actually Doug, but her creator. And well, Rasputin isn't stupid. In fact, she probably knows the evils of Mr. Sinister more than just about anyone else, and if he's been collaborating with Xavier on this plan to go back in time and kill Moira, then surely this can only be the wrong course of action, meaning Rasputin 4 does a complete about-face and jumps into time herself to try and stop Xavier from killing Moira. And speaking of little Moira, she actually does quite a bit to try and plead for her life, wondering just how bad things could possibly have gone with Krakoa in the future that has led Xavier to this moment. After all, as she puts it, she's known Charles in basically every one of her lives. In fact, they've been lovers in quite a few. Professor X even admits the older, more idealistic version of him before he met Moira, before Krakoa, probably wouldn't have been able to go through with this dark plan and kill Moira as a child. But now he's just lost so much, including his hope, and he says that killing Moira here and now before she can plant the seeds of Krakoa is actually the better option. The only other one they have is considerably worse, and he doesn't even want to fathom it. Xavier also opines on the way that him and Moira are actually pretty similar. Moira has lived so many lives over and over again, she basically created a whole nation so she could never be alone. But how she was ultimately selfish and self-serving, which of course means that it was only a matter of time before that nation built on sand would end up falling back into the sea. Likewise, Xavier himself is actually pretty self-critical, saying that he was always a spoiled rich kid, looking to be loved and have a family of his own. Unfortunately, it's only right here at the very end does Chuck realize that he can only have one or the other, and perhaps it's best that the dream of Krakoa remain a dream forever. Before Charles can properly pull the trigger, though, Rasputin 4 ends up swooping on in to try and make the save. Wouldn't you know it, Xavier even thought of this eventuality and brought with him a bunch of Madrock Sinisters to try and slow her down in one last desperate ploy. Believe it or not, though, it's not actually Rasputin who manages to stop Xavier from committing this terrible act. It's actually Rachel who's able to communicate with him psychically. Rachel appeals to Professor X's better angel, saying everything they've done and how far they've come since Krakoa started, it can't all be for nothing. There has to be another way, even if the other way is terrible. And this gambit ultimately ends up paying off. Professor X stays his hand and even uses his psychic powers to wipe Moira's memories so she won't actually recall this meeting. I mean, if you're just tampering with her memories, can't you just put in a little sticky note that says, hey, don't Don't start a mutant nation, thanks, sign Chuck. Ultimately, this could very well end up being a choice that Xavier and the others will live to regret as we once again move back to the present and return to Moira, who is finally inking her deal with the Dominion. What was the carrot on the end of the stick? Well, as Enigma explains, he needs to move around more freely in the time stream, and he can do this if he's able to access Moira's own unique Groundhog Day powers. Furthermore, if she's willing to this deal, then when the Enigma Dominion finishes its function of absorbing all intelligence in the known universe, he will be sure to allow Moira is able to actually keep her own self-awareness and independence, unlike everyone else, including Nimrod and Omega Sentinel, who don't seem to fully understand what the actual cost of godhood is. And hey, speaking of cost, now that the whole go back in time and terminate Moira before her powers manifest plan has failed, the good guys don't really need a Mr. Sinister around anymore, and as such, Rasputin is allowed to kill him. Which, assuming he doesn't have any more backups, this might actually be the real deal end of Sinister this time. Now, what exactly is this truly terrible Plan B that's so bad that Xavier didn't even want to think about it? Well, as Rachel explains, it involves resurrecting the Phoenix Force. Probably to gain access to that very fabled Phoenix Blade, only as the comic comes to a close, Xavier seems to have other ideas in mind as he shoots Rachel in the back. Don't worry, she's not dead though, because future solicitations have already basically spoiled that she's going to be fine at the end of this. Oops. And so that was Rise of the Powers of X issue number 3, everybody, and honestly, I'm a little conflicted, much as I've been conflicted on pretty much all the last few big X-Men stories I've read. On one hand, there's actually some really good stuff here. Xavier confronting young Moira and also confronting just how morally compromised he's become over this last era of stories. That's genuinely great stuff. The Enigma Dominion ultimately revealing that it was the thing that kicked all of this off in the first place by sending Omega Sentinel back in time. That's really clever. I don't know if that was always the intention when Hickman wrote that in the first place, but it certainly from a narrative standpoint wraps things in a nice little bow and further solidifies the Enigma Dominion as the true main central bad guy of the Krakoan era. Again, too, I don't know if it quite jives with everything from the beginning of this series and the themes and ideas it was playing with, what with the threats of nationalism, how racism and technology walk hand in hand, by basically just hand-waving a bunch of stuff away and say, well, Mr. Sinister did it. Well, Mr. Sinister did it. Nathaniel Essex did it. He didn't think there was a god, so instead he decided to create one. Overall, I think I feel comfortable giving this one a 7.5 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's definitely compelling enough that I'm certainly going to come back and see how all of this ends up shaking out. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.